again and welcome back to Bakewell, where we are in conversation once more with John Butler. And we're going to continue to reflect on comments, questions that have come through on the YouTube channel. So thank you for them. And we know that you appreciate them. And this is from Steve John. So I'll just go straight in verbatim. What do you do when you have to contend with bad people doing bad things?
Steve and all others who are concerned with this question, which I presume means just about all of you. The last few days I've been reading back through notes that I made some 35 years ago in my late 40s, when I'd been through a sort of crisis time in my life, which really forced me as never before to face up to believing either in this world or in my emerging experience of spirit. I'd already been meditating for 20 years or so, which I suppose, looking back, now seems very much a preliminary period, when I took meditation rather as an addition to my work and life as an ordinary man, a farmer. But from this period on, I almost had to make the choice between one or the other. And it wasn't easy. I tell you this just to remind, just to affirm that it's a lifelong struggle. In orthodoxy, it's called the unseen battle. And it is a battle. It really is, between the ego and what we call the world, which is life based on egoism, and this other world, which we approach by coming into the present moment and discovering the infinite well-being that arises from it. So here and now, I know we're in a church, but only a few yards away there's the world going on with all its competitive aggression. And a bit further away is the city with all that goes on there, the daily news, etc., all that we can all too easily label as bad. And yet here, if only we will make this first practical step of feeling our feet on the ground, our bottom on the chair, listening and looking, we will recognize this spirit, this stillness that I've been talking about all the time. And in that spirit, really paying attention to the here and now, let me ask you, what is bad? And where is it? Or is it just something that reappears when we lose our attention in the present moment and start wandering about in the realm of what the latest news is, of things far away beyond our sight and hearing? And that's it, really. the last video or two, I referred to St. George and the Dragon. Do we engage with this ghostly foe that can appear and reappear into our minds, and so often dominates our minds and our imaginations with all things, I would say this in inverted commas, all things bad? Or are we able to retain this inner balance, this inner peace, and realize that this apparent world of evil is not really as real as it seems? Again, let me remind you that to those of us that speak English, if you take the word evil and put it back to front, what happens? L-I-V-E. Evil, death, corruption. It's just the opposite of live or life, aliveness. It really is just like that. One way is light, the other way is dark. Which way are we looking? Jesus gives a very interesting commandment to us in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, resist not evil. Because if we do, if we start entering into this, into conflict with it, it just magnifies, doesn't it? The more we think about it, the worse it gets. So the real battle is not a sort of that sort of conflict. The real battle is between the dominion that this corrupted point of view has over us. So if you ask me, how do I deal with it now? Well, before I knew any better, like most other people, I strode out into the world and did what I could to confront it. Until I realized I wasn't really getting on very well. And I began to think a bit more deeply. And again, as I've told you on many times, one of the formative moments in my life is when I was suddenly told to make whole, be whole. And I only began, because mind you, it takes a long, long time for these things to sink in. I began to realize that the only trouble, the only darkness, which then transmitted its darkness upon the world, is in me. And that's where the battle is, within yourself. You can call it a process of purification, of purifying our own minds, so that we look and we see not darkness, but light. And when there is light, there is no more darkness, is there? Does the sun see its shadow? People ask, why does God allow it? But the deeper we go into spirit, I don't know if we ever can really dare to say we see as God sees. But even as we approach, we can get a glimmering of the realization that the closer to God we are, the less we see the bad in life. You begin to see that all things work together for good to those that love God. And that really evil and bad things, they disappear as mist before the sun.
So help me out here, John. Let me see if I've understood this correctly. You're saying if it's not so much whether there is evil out there in the world, so we can pray in the Lord's Prayer, deliver us from evil. In other words, it's something that encroaches upon us, shall we say, from the outside. Are you suggesting that it's not an illusion, but it's a misperception of this? If we were truly living in the light, then are you saying that evil disappears like a mist? I haven't quite grasped this.
Well, if you go into a dark room and switch on the light, what happens to the dark? It's very practical. But, my dears, let's be real about this. We ourselves live in, you can say, in a world of darkness, a world of ignorance, where there isn't very much light. We're all tarred with the same brush. And as I keep saying, it's a long time. It's long. Spiritual development is not a game. It's a long, lifelong process. In former times, the saints were considered the great heroes of spirit. You know, instead of athletes who run the fastest mile being held up as models of something for young people to achieve, it was these spiritual heroes, like the old hymn. How does it go? He who would true valor see, let him come hither. One here would constant be, come wind, come weather. Let no discouragement. I can't remember how it goes, but it's full of those sort of heroic words. And that's just how it is. It's just the same in today as it was in the Middle Ages. And again, think in the Bible of Jesus' parables of the sower and the seed, for example, that most of those that set out on the spiritual journey don't make it. They fall by the wayside for a variety of reasons. And it's hard work. I can tell you it is. And you'll have to face every sort of depression and loneliness and pain, because these dark forces don't give up without a struggle. But the heavenly goal is for sure. And those that strive throughout their lives, even if we don't attain the fullness of it, we certainly get much encouragement that we're in the right direction.
You refer to the forces of darkness, I think you used the phrase. So is evil objectively out there in the world like the force, like Darth Vader? May the dark force be with you. In other words, a noun, a presence, separate, or is evil an adjective? We do evil things, and it seems to be common to those who believe in God and those atheists. Everybody seems to instinctively recognize evil when they see it.
Yes, we do. We give it life, and we love to have scapegoats, the latest politician to offend us, or whoever it is. But again, we need to be clear, because, as I said, the more attention you give to darkness, it magnifies, doesn't it? If I just sat here and spoke to you about something that is considered offensive, you'd also be thinking about it, wouldn't you? It would dominate this video, because our attention, you're giving, as it were, conscious nourishment to whatever you give your attention to. Now, I've just implied, if not said direct, that evil is not as real as we think. But if you think it's real and believe in it, goodness me, it becomes real, doesn't it? And it appears to have a power because we've given it power. We've given it the power of our consciousness. We've given it our life. Now, if you stop doing that, if you stop being critical in your own minds, and this is why it's so important not to judge. Again, as Jesus says, it's one of the primary commandments, judge not, that ye be not judged. Because the moment you judge something, you make it that judgment. And so evil expands in proportion to the belief that's given to it, and it appears to have a power of its own. Now take that away, and it has no power whatsoever, at least over you that have withdrawn you. It may still be working on other people who still believe in it. No, there's only one power in creation, which is God. God is almighty. They're not two powers unless we give it. But remember that the primary sin in creation is man, here am I, looking at the light. In the light there's no problem, there's no darkness, no question, no fear. And I turn away in the dark, and I look at a world of shadow, of dark. And this is what we do. And so all this great edifice of evil is actually only the fault of those who do that. For them, evil is real. For those lucky enough to have acquired the ability to keep focused on the light, you don't see it at all. And there's another most lovely verse from the Psalms that is often used at times of funerals, at least in England. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. There it is in a nutshell, isn't it? When we're holding on to that presence, whether you call it God or stillness or divine consciousness, you may indeed face death and all manner of evil and not be overcome by it. In fact, pass through unscathed.
In a way, John, you've deftly pulled the rug on the problem of evil, which has taxed the greatest sages, saints, philosophers, and common man for centuries. You've just nullified it at a stroke, it seems to me, by saying if you don't dwell on it, it's not there. Now, I have to press you on that. The problem of evil, as it is stated, is how can evil exist in a world created by a good God?
Well, in a world which is not only created but governed by God, in other words, the kingdom of God, there is no evil, there is no shadow. But in a world governed by man, and not an sinful man, i.e. man who's turned away from the light and dwells in darkness, well, that's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? If you're not too keen on God, think of the sun. Yes, the sun. Up there in the sky. Does the sun see shadow? The world is as we make it. As we project it. Well, as I say, it isn't that easy to change your way of thinking, your way of believing. It's one thing to watch it on a video and say something or other, but these habits are so deeply ingrained in us over many years of conditioning in this world, by our education, no doubt, by our parents and everybody who more or less believed in evil, because that's a normality in this world, isn't it, a belief in it. That's why those who strive for something better, it's hard work. You've got to work against what virtually everybody else in the world is doing. You've got to have the guts to stand up and stand on your own feet and withstand the tide of public opinion.
A little glint of light, perhaps. So the radical idea, John, correct me if I'm wrong, is when Jesus includes in the Lord's Prayer that we're all familiar with, deliver us from evil, in effect, that's saying not to sort of protect us from an evil out there in the world, but deliver us from my evil projections, deliver us from my evil spectacles. I view the world with my black evil spectacles.
That's right.
Deliver us from this inbuilt flaw of seeing in the shadow. Is that the right way round?
Well, God helps those who help themselves. It may or may not be of benefit just to keep on repeating, deliver me from evil, but we need to do something about it ourselves. It's not much good asking if we go on believing in it, is it? It implies that we at least stop making judgments. Well, the moment we stop making judgments, you find you're already half the problem solved. Most of the problem solved. Just see if you can walk down the street and have no criticism or judgment of anything or anybody. Look at the rubbish and the traffic fumes and all that, and don't indulge in criticism. I tell you, spiritual work is hard work. But unless you're prepared to work, you'll stay where you are. Probably. Unless by grace something happens. We live in hope, don't we? Do you know, at this moment now, I think Those of you that are watching this video have probably forgotten to judge. You've probably forgotten to be critical of your neighbour down the road, have you? Forgotten about the latest terrible thing that's happening in the corridors of power. You see? Evil is like a dream, isn't it? Like a nightmare. You wake up in the morning and what happens? Where does it go? Where is darkness? Where's the monster you were fighting with in your dreams? In fact, this great bogey of death, the whole thing, you begin to realise it's not quite as real as it was. Somebody sweetly said in one of these comments, why don't I stop doing nothing and give myself to researching cancer or something. But you see, this work's often called causal. Spiritual work is causal work. You're going back to first cause. See, why do we live in a corrupt body, destined to die? If we're not going to die of cancer, we'll die of something else the next year, won't we? Anything that dies, that is not our true nature. That's the body of sin. And the wages of sin is death. So we need to come back to, the first cause of it all. And the cause is that we've turned away from first cause, which is God. And first cause is light. And there is no darkness there at all. I promise you it isn't. In deep meditation you may get a few glimpses of it. There's no darkness, and I tell you something else, your aches and pains disappear too. So does your age, believe it or not. I'm not a creaky old man at all. Ageless. Full of light. Then we begin to understand that's actually what I really am. I'm not this aging bag of bones called John, which I've spent most of my 80 years believing in, and everybody else is bag of bones. Light. And in light, you understand there is no more problem, there is no more question. Light is one, it's total. You see, you're complete. The end of all problems. So, my best advice to you is, those of you that meditate, keep plodding along, step by step, along in the weary way. That's all I've done. I don't think I've really done anything else to be able to speak to you in this way. Little by little we let go of our obsession with separation, darkness. And eventually the light sinks in, even to such a thick-skinned individual as me.